This is part 2 of a set of 5 videos recording my first PC build. In this video I install the motherboard into the case and I mount the CPU heatsink and fan. Before I go too far, I want to check what's inside the case and how everything will fit. Inside the case we have a bag with a lot of screws and a few cable ties. These are the cables for the front panel connectors, the switches and the LEDs. The mounting points for the motherboard are clearly marked by letters, and there's a panel telling you which letters apply for each type of board. For our board it looks like we need all the holes marked with the letter A for ATX. On the reverse side you can see the space where the power supply will go and the trays where we will fit the hard disks. To be sure, I put the motherboard over a piece of paper and marked where all of the mounting points were. Then I checked this against the marked points in the case. That lines up okay. I found that the board I have is smaller than a standard ATX size and doesn't use all the marked positions. One mounting hole on the board did not have a corresponding mounting point in the case, but I just accepted that 6 out of 7 mounting points was probably enough. From checking the case you can see that the motherboard will mount vertically with the I/O ports at the back, and next to the I/O ports will be the exhaust fan. The airflow through the case will be from the inlet fan at the front of the case and then past the CPU and out of the exhaust fan at the back. So we want the CPU fan to be mounted so that the air gets directed through the heatsink towards the exhaust fan. Put the heatsink like this on the board, and then the bracket is used to go through the heatsink and then to hold it down. The bracket is made to fit several options, so you need to check the instructions for how to set it for your board. There are 3 positions for the screws in the bracket. For this 1151 board, we need to set the screws in the middle position. They move easily by just pulling them and moving them to the middle corner position. There are several pins, slots and markings on the bracket to show how far to open it to properly match the board attachments. For this board we use Roman numeral position number 3. On the heatsink there's a protective plastic film that we have to peel off before we apply the thermal paste. There's a central hole and a small pin that help to correctly locate the mounting bracket onto the heatsink. The pin on the center of the bracket fits into the hole, and when the bracket's open to the correct position, the pin will sit in one of the slots on the bracket. So when we're ready to mount the heatsink, we set the bracket closed, we push it through the heatsink and then open it to position 3. Then locate the center pin and the side pin in position. Then we put the heatsink in position, line up the bracket and screw in the 4 screws. After understanding how everything would attach, I decided to change the build order and mount the motherboard in the case first rather than mounting the heatsink first. Both ways are possible, but I thought mounting the motherboard first would give me a more stable base to work on. So the next step was to work out the correct screws to use. There are 4 types of screw supplied with the case. One of them is a standoff. Only 3 were supplied, but all the mounting points I needed already had standoffs in place, so I didn't need to use any of them. The screw for the motherboard mounting is one of the smaller screws, and it has a small lip on the screw head. That one goes easily into the standoffs. There's another small one that's similar but with no lip, and a larger one. We'll use those later. So we need 6 of the small screws with the lip for the motherboard mounting. I just line up 1 screw hole first and then loosely fit the screw. Then align the board correctly and fit the remaining screws. Now we have the board in place, we can fit the heatsink. We need a small blob of the thermal compound on the CPU. About the size of a small pea is good. I use just a single blob to reduce the risk of any air gaps. I almost made a mistake here. Don't forget to remove the plastic coating before mounting the heatsink. I fitted opposite corners first and loosely screwed down the screws. The screws are spring loaded, so it takes a little bit of downward pressure to get the thread to locate. Once you have all 4 screws located, gradually tighten them down with a couple of turns on each in turn until they reach a stop. Finally, we have to fit the fan. Work out which way the fan is going to rotate and which way the airflow will go. I worked out that this fan is fitted so that it pushes air through the heatsink towards the exhaust fan. Later on I realised that the fan case has markings on it showing which way it rotates and which way the air flows, so check for that.